First order of business on the agenda is oaths of office and election of officers. We have all three of our attorney members have been sworn in, I believe. So it's done. We're back. So we will move into election of officers for the upcoming year. Currently, obviously, I'm the chair. Jeff is our vice chair, and I believe Wendy serves as our secretary treasurer, or your secretary, and Wendy's our treasurer. So I'll entertain a motion for election of those seats, either all together or individual.
I would rather that we keep the officers the same.
I was gonna say the same thing. Thank you very much.
Well, y'all done an excellent job. So yes,
It'll be a fun year coming.
You got the motion, I got the second.
I'll do a third.
Okay, all right, sounds good. All right, I hear any discussion. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right. Thank you. We do the best we can, and we're not tell us. Do I hear a motion to adopt this agenda? Yes. Got a motion? Got a second? Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right. Unfinished business, we have minutes from the May 16th meeting. Do I hear a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
A motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That motion carries. We'll move into some general discussion. Chad, can we talk about wetlands?
All right, thank you for having me here today to talk about this. I'm really here to introduce Randy and Richard with Mount Pleasant for a discussion they wanted to have with the board, a presentation they wanted to make. As you all know, we have been in a situation the last couple of years where every rock has been being turned over, looking behind every tree, every bush for capacity, for options to find immediate capacity, to find solutions for the short term, long term, for providing wastewater capacity. Back early in this year, I believe it was in January, it might have been February, Mount Pleasant asked Michael and myself to come down to talk through an idea that they had come across and a potential for a project to help the Mount Pleasant area, but even more so help the entire system as a whole, by the potential of treating wastewater there in Mount Pleasant instead of pumping it through a combination of 3 pump stations to the Rocky River wastewater treatment plant. So they've asked to come today to talk about one potential solution that they've looked at. I would like to note that as part of our facilities plan, we are looking at options, including this and other options down at Mount Pleasant for their potential. Because one thing important to know and to think about during this is our CIP that we have has about $20 million worth of upgrades and improvements and replacements to the pump station and force mains that come out of Mount Pleasant to move the wastewater to Rocky River. So really the look is, does it make more sense to treat that water there and spend that money to build wastewater treatment, freeing up capacity at Rocky River instead of pumping it the number of times that it is? So I'm going to turn this over, I don't know if Randy or Richard, but turn it over to them for their presentation, and we'll all be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Chad. This is something we've been talking about in Mount Pleasant for about 7 or 8 months. And we actually went up to Walnut Cove, what, about a month ago, Richard, or so, and looked at a engineered wetland wastewater system they had there. And we're very impressed with it. Walnut Cove is about the size of Mount Pleasant. It's something I was concerned about, it being open area. It basically looks like a bunch of fishing ponds, to give you an idea. I thought there's got to be odor associated with it. It's got to be. And there wasn't at all, except for the wildflowers and all that were blooming, and blackberry bushes and that type of thing. There wasn't any odor. But Richard and I have been talking about this along with our staff for quite some time. And it's something we just wanted to put before the staff and before the board as a possible alternative, something to look at. And it's being done in quite a few places. So Richard's been in the wastewater business for 36 years. So he got my attention on this. So he put together a presentation we'd like to make. about 10 minutes or so. Feel free to ask any questions and then we'll turn it over to Richard.
Thank you, Randy. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Richard McMillan. And just for transparency, just to let everyone know, many of you know me and have worked with me over the last 20 to 30 years almost. I'm a retired municipal utilities engineer with a number of counties and systems around the state. Currently, I work for the Wooten Company as a consultant engineer, and part of my duties is to provide engineering service to the town of Mount Pleasant, the town of Midland, so please excuse the shirt right now. The town of Wingate, Indian Trail, and wherever else they have me working across the state. So just wanted to get that out, to let you know what my role is with the town of Mount Pleasant. So what we'd like to do real quick is just, there's a lot of slides. Trust me, this is gonna go real quick though. We're not gonna read everything. There's a lot of pictures involved in this. And it's like Randy said, we have talked to Chad, we've talked to a number of Thomas a lot, and we realize WSACC has some issues with capacity. And we're gonna talk about that just a little bit as we get into this real quick. So, okay, not gonna read everything here. Current capacity, you know where you are. You're going to 30 MGD, 34 MGD down the road. Where you go in the future, that's currently being evaluated. WSACC has engaged Brown and Caldwell to study options for the future. Brown and Caldwell, fantastic firm. I've worked with them a number of times in the past. You did well getting them on board. Mount Pleasant sewer flow is roughly 1.4% of the total flow going into Rocky River. So we are literally a drop in the proverbial bucket. Not much, but like Chad said, there are a number of pump stations. They pump over 7 miles to Rocky River. There's a lot of operational issues with that. It's daisy chaining pump station, you got sulfide buildup, you got power consumption, force main degradation. We got here $11 million. Chad and I had a discussion. That is really money that was, I think, put in the CIP for force main improvements. So I think there's some other information Chad clarified on that. So long-term, like we said, is there a better solution? Mount Pleasant's growth. Since the early 2000s, the growth in Mount Pleasant has been flat. They really have not wanted to grow. However, aging infrastructure, some of the water lines downtown were put in back in the 30s. We have to make some improvements there. And so Mount Pleasant invested in $26 million in water and sewer infrastructure, just because a lot of it, we have to replace it. The town aims to grow slow to moderate pace over the next 25 years. We're not trying to compete with Concord, Harrisburg, Annapolis, but we realize as Cabarrus County keeps growing, some of that is going to slowly move out toward Mount Pleasant. We need to be ready for it out there. So currently where we are, we're just under 2,000 people. Current flow is just over 200,000 gallons a day. Like we said, growth has been flat. Mount Pleasant does have a desire to grow, but not lose the rural feel that makes them attractive and special. And that's something the town really takes pride in. Population by 2050, we can see us somewhere in the neighborhood of 5,000 to 6,000. Like we said, no desire to compete. County, you can see the county library here, the senior center that's being built currently. Town is seeking some light commercial retail growth, but with that, you gotta have some residential to support that. Multiple drainage basins come through Mount Pleasant. It almost makes it a prime spot for some type of treatment or some regional pump station. So, are there feasible options? Is kind of what we've talked to Mike and Chad about a little bit. Town of Walnut Cove. This is a study, or actually an image that's come out of the paper from years ago. The town of Walnut Cove has a wetland treatment system, and we'll talk about this in a little bit more detail. Town of Walnut Cove is very, very similar to Mount Pleasant. Population just under 2,000. Permitted flow on that treatment system is 500,000 gallons a day. You can see the cost numbers, the effluent numbers. Like Randy said, there is literally, we were shocked. There was no smell or odor coming off the ponds. The maintenance budget they have is next to nothing. They spend very little money on what's happening out there. Very little electrical cost. You can see the annual maintenance budget is roughly $10,000 a year, and that's coming from their ORC and wastewater treatment plant operator.
Go back to that just a second,
Yeah.
Richard, about the professor that's doing the study.
Excuse me.
I thought you'd get your NC State plug in there. And you just-
There we go. And I think I've got something about Professor Bushnell.
Okay.
But NC State has been working with the town. They've been doing studies. They've had doctoral students out there doing studies on the wastewater treatment process. So whenever there's an issue, NC State is closely involved in helping provide feedback and technical support on that stuff. And very quickly, you've got the flow coming in, you've got an effluent pump station. It comes in, or influent pump station, goes through basin 1, basin 2, goes through the duckweed raceway. Then it is splitter, goes into wetlands 1, wetlands 2, comes out through your chlorination, dechlorination, and then it's discharged back to the town Fort Creek right there. Roughly 23 acres. It has worked so well, they told us they have purchased property on the other side of the creek now for future expansion if possible. So what does this look like? There's basin 1. Like Randy said, it looks like a fishing pond. They don't screen. They have some things that Randy and I saw that we thought, I probably could improve on that, but this is how they operate. Basin 2, they've got a couple of aerators out there. You can see, it actually looks pretty nice. There's your raceway in the middle. Actually, there are geese, some ducks out there in the middle of it. There's wetlands 1. Muskrat den, a lot of wildlife out here. Continuation of wetlands 1, wetlands 2, the circle right there is a massive turtle sitting in the middle of that. More wetlands 2, a lot of cattails, bushes all along the side. And like Randy said, the main thing that we smelled was fragrance from all the bushes around the wetland pond. Another wetland 2. Geese in the middle of the wetland. There's your discharge going over to your chlorination, your flume going out. Here's just a picture. There's your contact chamber. There's your splitter there going to your different wetlands and your flume leaving right there going out. Very compact, very simple, next to nothing.
I think they were.
Are they, I'm sorry, Randy.
They're using chlorine
They're
and
using chlorine and then there's sodium.
Sulfide.
That's it. Yeah.
sorry.
I think I may have had it in there. Here, sorry, keep running forward.
Is that a normally dry stream that they're discharging in, or is that a normally wet stream that they're discharging?
Normally wet stream. It's pretty decent sized creek that flows by.
Okay.
So possible benefits to a wetland, at least from the Walnut Cove takeaway, lower conventional cost. Now, the 40 gallons here was based on the bid prices for the Rocky River plant. Chad and I've had a discussion. The real number on that's about 22 to 23 gallons. So that was a little misleading, but we understand there's a lot of electrical gear, switch gear and other things involved in that. That wasn't directly tied with the capacity. So forgive me for that little bit of error there. What we saw with them is lower maintenance costs, electrical costs, minimal operator time. Variety of wildlife, plant life out there was great. No odor. That was the thing that surprised us most. We expected to get some. There was none. We found the whole time walking around out there. Wildlife is abundant. Basins wet in the wetlands, geese, ducks, turtles, frogs, birds, deer. I mean, it was all out there from what we saw. And I said, as we said earlier, they purchased additional acreage across the creek for future expansion. Is this the catch-all solution? No. And we're not even claiming that to be the capacity issue solving, because we're such a small amount to the total flow. Could this be a possible solution for wastewater? Maybe. Walnut Cove's treatment demonstrates that it can work and could be an option for smaller flows. That's really all we're talking about is this an option? Is it an option for WSACC? Is it an option for Mount Pleasant? Maybe. We talked about where possibly down near the bottom of Mount Pleasant where the creeks converge, Adams Creek, Dutch Buffalo, there is roughly 392 acres of land conservancy partnership down here where it's currently being farmed. You can see it outlined in yellow here. There's currently trails that run through that area. There's the current WSACC pump station here. All this area here is being farmed. Adjacent farmlands could benefit from the occasional vegetation clean out. You also have some great opportunity to partner with Harris County Schools for field trips, study on nature, wetlands, biology, chemistry. That's one thing we found out to talk about here just a little bit. If the system is implemented, this could be a gem to promote the environment and WSAC and the county in this area.
Something the Walnut Cove told us that they have quite a few visits to their site and they didn't design it for that. They designed it for wastewater treatment. So if there was something that we would to look at down the road, they designed it for that. So there could be some trails. There's already walking trails there and some signage. But it was fascinating that, using nature to take care of treating wastewater. So, and as Richard gets through another couple slides, there's a couple other places, but Walnut Cove said they have quite a few classes coming, biology classes, and also if we were to do something like this, we want to design on the front end so they would make it more accommodating for people. Visit again. It was fascinating.
You may have had this on a previous slide. What's the capacity of Walnut Cove?
About 500,000 gallons a day.
500,000. They use,
They're currently at about 200,000 gallons a day. So they're about half of that.
is that a function of just land size?
It is.
I mean, if you had 52 acres, you could get 1,000,000 gallons conceivably, just
Right.
the napkin kind of.
I would think so. My experience, and just to let you know, with wetland wastewater treatment over my years of work, and pretty much, I've never seen them work well until some of these. Now, some of the ones I've seen were just poorly run, poorly operated, and they ended up, other systems came in and took over and pumped it where it needed to go. So these are a little different. City of Goldsboro, for example, they use one, they have about 42 acres of wetland treatment ponds. They do their preliminary treatment in this area. Their primary goal for the wetland treatment is for nitrogen reduction. And their nitrogen reduction, what they call for is 87%. That's based on Bobby Edwards, retreatment coordinator down with the city of Goldsboro. Now, what do all these ponds look like? Well, back at their permitted flow was 14.2 million gallons a day. Average flow is about 10. Is what the city of Goldsboro has. This is what their wetlands look like, plant life, and this is straight off of their website. They have constructed wetlands, multiple zones, shallow, deep marshes, 52,000 wetland plants, 13 species. They have tons of environmental groups come through and look at this as well as an education prospect. City of Arcata, California. This is something Randy actually found, and we looked more and more. These are their drawings and information. Permitted capacity, they're sitting literally on the ocean, on the estuary right here. Permitted capacity at 2.3 million. Ponds were built in 52, upgraded in 85. Bottom line is natural area 90 acres, 46 acre ponds, treatment ponds. What do they do with all this? This is what they do. This is a marsh and wildlife sanctuary. They have people from all over the world come for migratory birds that visit these wetland areas. And this is their website that I've included. This is their information off their website. They use it as a drawing card to show what they're doing, how they're benefiting their environment. That's just, it's another example. Does it work in every case? Is it perfect in every situation? No. But this is another example of what someone else is doing. Walking paths, bike paths, they want people to go there. So in closing, we're just wanting to help find solutions. We know the possibility of some home wastewater treatment in Mount Pleasant could address some of the operational issues you're experiencing with pump stations and force mains. Is it the silver bullet that's going to fix everything? Absolutely not. Like I said, Mount Pleasant is such a small percentage of the actual flow going to Rocky River. We realize that. We're just wanting, is this an option? When you look at the study, and it may not be this process of wetlands exactly. There may be some hybrid system on some of that. Like we said, WSACC and Brown and Caldwell are working. I've already said you've got a great firm with Brown and Caldwell. I think they're going to do you great. We just wanted to come and present what Randy and I have actually found with the photos and what we found in Walnut Cove. So with that, I'll be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Is the permitting process and, the required parameters that you have to meet on lots of different stuff, is all of that the same as it would be for Rocky River?
I think it would be similar, it's be the same. What Rocky River does, and Chad, you can chime in anytime. Any wastewater plant condenses what Mother Nature does. And so your footprint's gonna be a lot smaller, your process is gonna be smaller. The wetland issue, you gotta have a lot more land because you rely on Mother Nature to take care of it. So the state permits it. I haven't talked to them directly as far as how they feel about it. They said they've got a couple in the state, Goldsboro and Walnut Cove are just two.
What about major weather events?
It's like Goldsboro sitting right on the Neuse River. So they're in the
I saw that in that
Happens when the Neuse
slide.
River gets out of its banks down there.
It takes it just like anything else. Same thing with
Dilution
Walnut
is the best
Cove.
solution.
Well, a lot of that's already treated, at least somewhat and partially going through.
Yeah.
How does the state feel about that? We have to find out.
And any system like that you design, you're gonna have to design for peak flows and
Correct.
it's gonna have to be designed from that, any type of system that you.
So most of these lagoons, ponds, wetlands, all these things are really more private application, not private, but business type. I'm thinking of cruise meats, thinking of Murphy Farms, the big ones that are using it for more specialized waste.
Children's Pride down in Union County. When I was assistant director down there, I had to deal with them. And they had lagoons in back that did their primary treatment of blood and parts and everything else. It still went to the wastewater system. We still grabbed it. We still pumped it back to Monroe when I was down there. Theirs is kind of a partial treatment. I think they should have treated it a lot more than what they did because it's always a problem.
But Goldsboro example looked like it was a lot of capacity for not a lot of land. How's that different from Walnut Cove in your opinion is?
I think, and here again, primarily Goldsboro was for nitrogen reduction. And I think that's what their ponds are for. How they route them through, I'm not quite sure. We didn't get into that much detail.
I think it's a little bit more of a polishing situation
Yes.
where they have a more compact, conventional type plant, but then they have all these basins. They're blessed down there with flat land, extremely flat land. So you've got the ability to spread out and do those
If
things.
you go back, I mean, I think maybe you go back to the slide for Walnut Cove and look at that footprint again.
The hybrid system.
Yeah, so the influence, you said they are doing some minimal screening, but.
They
not
were, but they're not.
Okay,
They could not get a automatic bar screen small enough to fit in their pump station. So literally when it comes out through a pipe on this side over here, and they've already just resided the fact that when it's time to clean it out, they just have to dredge some of that out. Because typically the worst problem we have is
Screenings and grit, all that.
screenings and grit, but primarily it's these flushable wipes that are not degradable.
Yeah.
So that's typically what we see in a lot of those situations. So if the operator before he told us if they had to do it again, they would make some improvement to try to put some type of bar screen in automatic. Because right now what they have is just a manual, and they were spending too much time going in there with rakes, just trying to rake it off.
again, what's the acreage on this?
Acre is about 15. At that.
It was 23.
Yeah, 23 acres.
So is this gravity flow or is all this pumped?
All gravity. And the only place it is pumped is right here where they lift it and it goes into the first basin. The rest of it's by gravity all the way through.
Chad, particularly with the 500,000 capacity, does not make you think of Big Creek?
Yeah, I mean, it's a similar, Mount Pleasant and Midland in a lot of ways are very similar from their size standpoint, flow and population and size standpoint. So it's very similar.
And so we certainly have excess acreage there. A lot of them do some.
Right.
Yeah. And here again, Randy and I, we just wanted to bring this and just provide information. we talked to staff about it. We're not trying to supersede them. We work great with staff. I love these guys. We're just trying to, how can we help the process along?
And you have had these initial discussions with the top of the land.
Our assistant manager, Aaron, has had the discussion and they're somewhat nodding their head like, okay. But I think what they would want is somehow tying it in with the environmental, with the trails, because that's kind of what they're about.
Yeah, and they have that whole Savannah restoration project going on and everything.
So they could see it as a positive benefit as well.
They were excited about the possibility of harvesting the plant life that's there and harvesting and then reusing that on the field. So they've worked with the farmers. About 200 acres of that 400 is being farmed. So we thought it, kind of made sense. The sewer is already going there and being pumped. There's 400 acres sitting there in conservation. There's already walking trails there. Everything just kind of lined up that we ought to take a look at it. And it, might make sense, it might not, but we saw that other locations were doing it really all over the world. But the one at Walnut Cove is a little kind of run down, not well maintained. It's not something I knew if WSACC was doing it, it would be up to speed. Yeah, but they didn't design it to really be used the way it's being used today. And they could use a uplift and facelift, et cetera, but the process was working. I think they had one violation.
The one violation they had is when their chlorine injector went out. They had one ammonia issue in the wetland area. And when NC State come up and helped them, they basically figured out that not the lilies, the cattails were really too old. They suggested they cleaned them out, scraped them back down, replanted, ammonia dropped right back down.
Obviously, it's an advantage. There doesn't seem to be anything surrounding it. You could have a subdivision just to the north of you, but you might be concerned.
That's why I was worried about the odor.
Yeah.
And was very pleasing. It was a warm day when we went. And when we walked right up to where the effluent was, there was the slightest odor of like dirt, like soil.
All super.
But other than, as soon as we get out of the vehicle, I told Richard, I said, well, so far so good. And it's, they have a fairly good population base just kind of to the top part of the screen going back towards town. So, but yeah, we do have a subdivision that likes to complain about things.
I didn't say that.
Yes, I will.
What was your standard cost on this?
Just north of that.
They built this for 600,000 when it was initially built.
When was that?
That was
96.
96, yes.
And from a permitting perspective, I'm assuming the state would just be concerned with the same things they're always concerned with, how the water body's gonna handle the loading and what the background loading already is. I mean, there's nothing different that they would look at?
Yeah, I don't know. I think that that's something that there's not as much data out there on. There's not as many of those systems. So I don't know to the level at which the EQ may be skeptical or not about it. You don't know.
Is we had the Yadkin PD Water Management Group met today again, and the state again brought up nutrient loading in Rocky River. It keeps rearing its ugly head.
But I do want to make the point that this is an option that's being looked at. It's going to be evaluated. There's other options that are fairly economical in the scheme of things, economical treatment options such as oxidation ditches, which is a similar type process. It's just a little more controlled, a little more contained. There's plenty of options that are going to be looked at, and this is going to have to be looked at from a business case standpoint. When you're looking at the investments that need to be made into the system into the future, when you look at the cost to operate the pump stations, maintain the force main, when you look at the capacity that would be freed up within the main pumping station at the plant, which is a pinch point for expansion into the future, is the main pump station, then all that has to kind of go into a decision matrix to really make sense of where do we spend our money. I mean, that's really what it comes down to, is where and how do we spend our money. We know we have to spend money, we have to build capacity. It's just what makes the most sense. Forward. I will say again, just like with looking at this plan at the grounds, it is very advantageous to us that we have an updated model of the Rocky River. This again would involve a little extension of that model up Dutch Buffalo Creek, which would be pretty straightforward, just like this is looking at Cottle Creek and Wolf Meadow. But we are very lucky to have, or very much benefited to have that up-to-date river model. That was definitely worth the effort if this was part of this master planning effort.
So one small caveat is Mount Pleasant takes its water out of Dutch Buffalo 5 miles upstream from where this is right now. Use it, put it right back in. And it's like we said early on, we're not saying this process is the end all be all best thing in the world to do. We realize that. We just wanted to let you know what Randy and I saw when we went up there.
Very worthwhile looking at all these alternatives. Remind me, Cruz, they're spray irrigating?
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. They have.
So which would be an option. I mean, you have additional farmland on the other side of on the east side of the creek too, so.
For example, in Union County, the Sycamore plant we ran on there was a zero discharge, but you have a golf course right there. So the wastewater is treated from the neighborhood, goes in the large holding lagoons, irrigated right back on the golf course. So there are all sorts of options and everything out there. So all we're trying to do is, like I said, we love working with these guys and we'll continue to work. We'll support them and whatever they want to do. But we want to share information.
Good. Any questions?
Thank you all for the time.
Thank you.
Yeah, this was good. Yeah, thanks for your time.
Thank you. We appreciate your time.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Okay, Mike, you want to brief us on this state legislation?
This is the version that we received yesterday, the most up-to-date version that we're aware of. Chad tried to call the senator yesterday, but he's been tied up and hasn't had a chance to call back yet, just to talk to him about this. Really, from a WSAC standpoint, it really doesn't impact us, but we wanted to see if the board as a group wanted to pass a resolution or had certain concerns that we as a body could address. And this also gives, I guess, each of you a chance to discuss among yourselves concerns or questions you may have about what we need to do. We can follow up with, we've been working with the league on this also. Williams rounded them into the discussion and expressed our concerns, particularly about the system development fees.
Yeah, we had a call last week with Aaron from the League of Municipalities, and also the Association of County Commissioners was on that call as well, and expressed WSAC's concerns as well as our member jurisdictions concerns. One of those got addressed by that there's language in there about you couldn't charge impact fees. And they did clarify that and put in except as otherwise provided by law. So we are statutorily authorized to collect system development fees, but we wanted to make sure we didn't inadvertently lose that right. And then the way I understand it in the latest versions of the rankings before, it was like it had residential and all the other categories. Now I think it's just like it's just limited to residential. You can't rate like one type of residential over another type of residential. So that's not really so much a WSAC concern now, as much as, you know, it might be a concern for the members and their existing policies. Obviously, we'd like to help you guys out to the extent we can. We talked to Aaron again with the league today. It's not a done deal. It'll get voted on next week, but she says it's kind of getting close to being a done deal. Like, you know, it's not in stone yet, but it's getting close. I also reached out to Senator Newton yesterday, and he was tied up. He just sent me, you know, a message back that they're hearing our concerns and working on it. But yeah, so this is a fluid thing, but I think to the extent you guys have comments from your municipalities, you probably do want to get those in front of everybody as soon as you can, because this could get passed as early as next week.
So Ian, can I ask a question? What is your interpretation of C?
You know, I've read all this stuff like 20 times and I can't even.
Okay, well, that makes me
follow
feel
up.
better. And
Yes.
at the same time, I just feel very, you know, when the first version came out, I know this looks very different, but the scoring piece of it, or preference system, that feels very vague to me from a perspective of, well, it feels very targeted and yet vague at the same time. And I just want, when I read this, it's like, you can't do that for residential development that does any of the following. And like when I like specifically, I don't know, I mean, like, I don't understand how that's related, I guess, is kind of my first question. And then I've got a little bit of concern about B2, because Jeff and I were talking about this of like, there's the shall not require the applicant on the residential, like the adherence of the land. I mean, like, we have a land use plan, like, is that, you know what I mean? Like, what are you, like, what is the interpretation of that?
Yeah, that was one of the big worries that the league had, was that it almost could preclude you guys from having other things, like other regulations that you already properly have.
Right.
And they said they were trying to work on that to correct that, but I still think I agree with that. And on the residential, the same thing. I mean, I think their intent though is in talking to the league, to your point, they do think this is like a targeted thing. I mean, they think there was one developer, that probably brought this forward. And so they're trying to address a specific concern by doing a new act that affects the entire state. So kind of just working with them to clarify how that works.
Where it would help everybody if we knew what the impetus was. I mean, if it's because in Smallville, they said you're not gonna get sewer allocation unless you have parking spaces this size.
Well, I mean, the league, well, in talking to the league did say they think this actually comes from Kannapolis. I don't know if you guys, Daryl and Mike, if you guys are hearing that, but they think that the genesis,
Well, that makes me feel better, because I always thought it was us.
We clearly have standards, we have a scoring system that, I don't recall parking coming up, but definitely, the architectural stuff and the investment level and things like that, which we know are outside of what the statute allows, but it's been a mutually agreeable thing for them.
that's right.
They're saying-
I think this, and we have not done this yet. I mean, we're happy to reach out, during the system development. We did reach out to the Home Builders Association, and we did have a good working relationship with them, and we figured it out. Where we got the system development fee language like we wanted to, and everybody worked together. So I think there's still a chance to do that here too, of just clarifying. The ambiguity worries us, but I mean, even more so probably for our members. I mean, so we're happy to kind of throw our support for whatever our members think is the best thing here.
Yeah, there's a very large residential developer that we had to part ways with, and that's probably the origin of this is my guess. They moved on. Agreeable moving on. So that's probably part of it. And they're probably very influential. So, the main thing is that the scoring system's still in place. The problem is for us is I'm not sure what's left to score. If they watered it down so much, then
Well, that's
how
gonna
do you
be,
distinguish between two different residential
that was
developments?
gonna be my question. So if you can't have a preference system, what is the other? If it's not preference, it's first come, first serve. I mean, I don't know what you put in between.
Right, that was just an assumption I made, didn't when I read.
That's the target. Go back to first come
But I
first.
think that's the original version was clearly that.
Oh, yeah.
This version seems to say you can have a scoring system, you just can't do certain things, 3 things
Correct.
in that scoring system.
Yes.
If you want to score something else, I don't know what the other things are, frankly, not parking, but the other two are clearly, that was the driving force for us, so it'll water it down to the point that I don't know if we'll have a scoring system. If it's first come, first serve, I don't even know how that works. I don't even have a clue.
Well, and we'd be done at our next meeting and have no sewer. I mean, it'd be over.
But what it does, I think what it doesn't do is prohibit us from doing set-asides for non-residential. I think that's pretty clear. I don't see anything in here that says.
That's right. I think that is an improvement over like the
Yes.
first versions of it. You could argue that, you couldn't rank anything over residential. I think now it's more limited of how you rank within residential bucket, but you could still, to your point, if you wanted to set the whole thing aside, arguably for economic development, you might have that right.
I'm really surprised that didn't stick. But
So the one thing we did and the league is strong on this. I mean, and I think they have the ear of folks in Raleigh of that pushing hard that hurts economic development across the state. Like that first version, there was a real threat to economic development. And I think they did listen to that.
And I'm amazed that they picked out Senator Jarvis for lots of different reasons. I'm amazed. That county is, at least the southern half of the county hasn't had residential development in years in the process. In fact, the town of Denton just got a 40-house subdivision, first one in 5-year period of time that they got. So I can't imagine why he is playing in this puddle. It doesn't seem that, I mean, he would want all the economic development he could get in that county. And why he would be writing language or having somebody write language that would be opposed to economic development would seem to be just the opposite of what he needs in the county. So, and he has never really been a big player at the legislature. He and his House equivalent don't have much clout.
That's
The
why I think it's coming
legislature.
from him.
And so it's not, somebody else has just asked him to put his name on it. He's just doing a favor for somebody
My
else.
name on it for either reason that I don't want my name on it, or I don't have the ability to put my name on it because I'm a developer, so I need your name on it. Yeah. How do you guys do your score? Like, how do you, what is your process from a Kannapolis perspective? Like if you have, because I know you guys put them on every agenda, right? You do those at every meeting?
we have development agreements that flow out of that.
Mhm.
Those are on plenty of agreements, or plenty of meetings, but we do it, we have every 6 months, we do a reevaluation based on what WSACC tells the new number is. And then if there's excess capacity, we'll open it up for developers to submit.
Okay.
In most cases, it's small stuff. We just going forward, we're not gonna have enough to open up a big 400 lot subdivision for a while. So it's mostly little things, infill development, a lot of commercial stuff. And then we'll just open it up and then they submit their proposals. And they fill out a matrix form that's got all the things in it. And then council, if there's enough, they'll do it for everybody. But if there's too much, they'll have to go by the
So
ranking.
do you guys vote every project? Do you vote on like, okay, ABC? Like, do you go down and vote on every project? Or-
They'll just have a list every 6 months. And then they'll, like I said, if there's enough capacity and there's 5 projects and you can get it within that capacity, we approve them all. The council will sign off on it. Too many, which I don't know if we even had that yet. Where
So
we've had
you guys
too many.
you haven't been in a position yet to where there were too many, where you decided that a project was, that you were limited and that it wasn't worthy.
Yeah, and we did a little different, is we had a huge amount at the very beginning of all this that were backlogged. It was 19 projects and several thousand lots. Council made a decision, they're far enough along when all this went down, we're gonna get them what they need. So those that had invested, we didn't have any fights and they just moved on. We're lucky that the timing was right and the number was right, we can do that. And then from then, we've just said no more residential, essentially. There is no more. Except for some infill stuff, and most of it is set aside for commercial and other, non-residential projects.
So was that the deal with the big developer that you parted ways with, that they want what you didn't have?
Yeah, that was one that we were entertaining, taking some of that set aside and doing a deal with them if we could get the right deal. And that
But the
was.
deal, I'm sorry, Mike, but the deal fell apart because it was a bait and switch. They offered something and then when it got time to agree to it, they didn't want to agree to all those things that they had offered the first part. They were gonna have, I think it was 4 different levels of housing. Each housing would be a little community within the community and certain amenities would go along with those houses. Well, then when it came time to sign off on the final deal, they just wanted one system that was going to regulate everything. And it was not close to what they offered us the first time.
Let's put it more distinctly or directly. They were gonna put 1,200 square foot entry-level houses on Kannapolis Lake. And that wasn't gonna fly. So there's a place for everything. That's not the place for it. So it's not surprising if what you heard is right, that could very well be where this.
Yeah, I mean, the disappointing thing that we had, again, was just that this got introduced and then we don't, nobody ever talks to us or asks us about it. So even though we made it clear many times that we would like to have a seat at the table, thankfully, I think Jennifer and others kind of brought it to everybody's attention as soon as they saw it. And that was great. We immediately reached out to the league and have had conversations, and I do feel like they're listening to us, but it's like these things, it always is a little disappointing, like they get introduced in Raleigh and they just start taking off without anybody talking to us. But thankfully we were made aware of it and we jumped into the conversation, but I do think it makes sense. I'll for Chad talked to Senator Newton. Like I said, I've got a message into him. I think the mayor of Concord's talked to him. I think some other folks to express their concerns with this.
Sad part is it's probably gonna have the opposite effect of what they're trying to do here. It's going to make jurisdictions say, I'm not gonna take that risk on residential development because we can't negotiate. We can't get the best product with a limited amount of resource we have in sewer. So we're just not going to take that chance. We're going to focus on non-residential and they lose. I mean, so it just, there's a better
Yeah,
way.
I think that's right, because now you'd be a little apprehensive about choosing a residential product, because then if you said no to somebody else, yeah. So I agree. Yeah, the first version of this was just a head scratcher about who even wrote it. I mean, but anyway.
Especially if that new residential is gonna have to be at least 15% less than market value or something else mixed into the whole group of questions about what it's going to be.
When I was talking to the league and the commissioner representatives, I explained that they were taking away the home builders were taking away the incentive for the jurisdictions to invest in capacity expansion, because you're not going to want to spend millions and millions, hundreds of millions of dollars to expand the plant if you can't control who gets it and make those kind of decisions. Why would you make that investment? So it's real short-sighted on their part, short-term gains, which is sort of in the long run.
My opinion, we've done everything we can do. I think we've all been talking to the league and some of us directly to our delegation. So unless somebody disagrees, I think it's probably so far baked now that anything we say is not gonna make much difference, but.
I think the conversations need to continue, but we have I guess we have a resolution that's ready to go that we passed last week at council, but kind of holding on to it, because at that point we're like,
Yeah.
what are we passing resolution on? Because there's,
It's changing.
like, and every day you're like, here's an update. So we just kind of have a generic kind of statement ready to go. Bill did talk to Paul. We've talked to the league several times, and I don't know. I agree with you, William. It's frustrating when something like this comes out of the gate when we could have talked about it first. And now the problem is you've kind of got this roadmap that's set. And so then any changes, you're going off of something that shouldn't even be there in the first place, but that's always my complaint about Raleigh. So I'll just get off that soapbox, but
Well, we could be right on there in that soapbox with you as we were having people de-annexed from our community, and nobody bothered to tell us that the guy wanted to be de-annexed from the community. So, I mean,
Yeah.
why would a legislator even get involved in that? It just, especially when that legislator has nothing to do with Kannapolis. He's another part of the county. I mean, so.
Conversations Williams had on section B, but it's so poorly written for all. Four sets of negatives.
Yeah.
For the conclusion here. That again, Peters, at least a developer will read this as it preempts land use.
Any land use, yeah, I agree. Yeah, you could read it that way.
And so I think,
And they've told us that's not the intent, but it's like, okay, but
But
yeah, somebody could read it like that.
it doesn't, it's not clear it doesn't read that way. I think it is.
Yeah, 100% agree.
And if it's not clear, you're gonna have litigation.
Yeah, because we're gonna, we're all gonna end up litigating.
Well, what's worrisome, the initial call we had, we had hoped really that this would get punted, to the long session, but it sounds based on what the league said today, they don't think that's gonna happen, because we just want more thought behind this of like, okay, even if you're gonna do it, let's just not get in such a rush, but it seems.
so have you
It's gone
figured out
too
why
far.
that is? Cause like there's something there then, right? Like it's either someone, right? Or some company, some
specific.
project. So,
It's petty retribution for
Right.
somebody getting their feelings hurt, but what's gonna happen is they're gonna pass a poor version of this. And I can, like, if this passed, we would immediately pull all residential off and put everything in economic development. And residential can be economic development. So apply through that pot. It's no longer, see if it rises to our economic development standards. And then in the long section, we'll end up with an economic development bill that
addresses that.
We can all just keep trying to, or they can quit, they can.
we can work together.
Something decent. So that's been our conversation with our legislators and Paul. Diamond and Crutchfield and Baker just saying, look, this is just, it's just poor. There's no sense modifying it. But
I agree. You almost need to throw that in the trash can and start over, but we've expressed that too.
Okay. Any other thoughts or discussion? I don't hear any specific action. I think we stay the course.
This is more just we just educate, I think everybody's on the same page.
Good. Okay, moving on. We have a request to approve an employment agreement with our to-be new executive director. Robin, you want to walk us through that?
I do. I understand that you guys have all seen this, employment agreement. And it is to, if this agreement is, employment agreement is very similar to the one that was written for, Michael when he was appointed as the executive director. They've done some work on some language under severance and terminations. So at this time, unless there's any questions or concerns, I would like to ask for your approval to approve the employment agreement to acquire executive director, our new executive director, Chad Moncannon, effective September 1st.
Any questions for Robin or William or each other?
Same copy,
Ed?
same copy I've seen last time, I'm assuming that.
Nothing's changed since the last one that went out. I think there was a little clarification in some of the severance.
Yes, severance, the couple of little changes we made since last time. One, termination, you guys would give him 90 days. He would have to give you 90 days. That was actually something I think you guys wanted because of the amount of time it would take to replace the executive director. And then on the severance, it's still the 9 months. We kind of clarified it because we were worried there was a bit of a loophole when the 1-year terms expire. Like, what if you just didn't extend his term, that you could basically let him go? And I don't think that was the intent. I think the intent was if you let him go during the 5 years without cause, that you would give him 9 months severance. So we just kind of closed that loophole. So it's kind of clarifying. If you terminate him for a cause event, then you don't know that 9 months severance.
Triggers another action.
And those were really the only two changes.
Right.
And Chad has agreed to
Yeah.
document as written.
Yeah.
That's in our favor.
So any other questions? If not, do I hear a motion to approve this employment agreement with Chad Von Cannon?
Make the motion.
Second.
A motion second, any discussion? All in favor, say aye. Motion carries. Chad, we're thrilled. We're happy you're on board.
I appreciate the confidence that you guys have in me, and I'll continue to push and fight and call for this organization every way I can, and excited about it.
Start here. Summit number 1.
Yeah, there you
Kill that.
An easy one to start.
Yes, please.
There'll be some fun ones in the next year, I guarantee you.
Oh, no doubt.
But we're thrilled and reach this agreement and looking forward to good things. And that's unanimous from the board. So, thank you. Okay, we will move on to some reports or a report, Thomas.
Yes, sir. Chairman, members of the board, I believe in May, we brought an update on all of our CIP projects, all the studies, all the things we're working on. This one is back to a focus on the wastewater treatment plant expansion. So wanted to go through that, some of the things going on. And we are actually, it says startup preview in the agenda, but we are actually in the midst of startup right now. So we'll highlight some of those things. We're excited to be at that point. So first, kind of what our contractor has done over the past month here. They have completed the medium voltage switch gear, the wire terminations, all those sorts of things. That's been a big milestone. We'll talk a little bit about startup for some of that equipment shortly. They've installed some light poles. We are getting new lighting throughout the plant, some shorter poles and more of them. So they've started this at some key areas in the plant. They have continued replacing drives at the primary clarifiers. Those drives were original to the plant. They've done a great job, but it's just time for them to come out, something new to go in. Grounding rings and placing backfill at the new gravity thickeners. We'll have a picture of that shortly. They've continued work on the new secondary clarifier distribution boxes, scum boxes, and RAS pump stations. That is all phase 4 work, along with some duct bank placement for the electrical that's associated with phase 4 as well. So we're in this period of time where we're kind of finishing up the phase 3 efforts to get to 30 MGD, and phase 4 is in full swing, going to 34 MGD at the same time. And then they have continued efforts for startup and commissioning, on phase 3. So a few pictures, our blower building. The electrical equipment is at the far end of this building. That is all here installed, wires terminated. They'll be going through startup of that shortly. This end of the building that you can see in that picture on the right will be for the phase 4 blowers. So you can see that they've opened up the pipe penetrations there where the sunlight's coming in, and they are starting to run that pipe down to the blowers. Blower testing will be very soon here. Gravity thickeners and thickened sludge pump station number 2. You can see a little contrast between these two pictures. In April, they had a lot of buried piping work. They were working on some waterproofing, all those sorts of things. They have brought that up with the backfill now. So we don't have a giant excavation there anymore, which is a nice place to be. Secondary clarifiers, this is representative. We have 8 secondary clarifiers. We don't have number 1 and 2, which is why this one is number 9. But we have 8 secondary clarifiers. This coating work, this restoration work is going to be happening in all of those clarifiers. They have started with number 9, so they are blasting and recoating that mechanism. They are installing a new drive, and we'll have new controls and new weirs and baffles by the time we're done. So the concrete and the existing mechanism will remain. The mechanism will be recoated, but most other things will be new. Distribution boxes 3 and 5. It's a little hard to see here maybe. These are the new secondary clarifier influent distribution boxes, and they had to excavate around the pipes, existing pipes there. So there is water being treated that's moving through these pipes. They had to excavate around that. They had a series of chains holding those up. It was quite an operation, but they're at the point now, they're pouring walls on those boxes. And they will, once they get everything else done, they will cut into those pipes, and the flow will go through these boxes to be distributed in a more even fashion. RAS pump station number 8. Again, we've got 8 pump stations for 8 secondary clarifiers. This will allow us more control from each individual clarifier. So this is just the wet well going in for that. There will be pumps that go down in that wet well, and they've situated that over an existing pipe, so they'll be cutting into that pipe as well to allow that flow to go into this box and be pumped out from there. So for the next month, we've talked about the interceptor building for a while now with our contractor and engineer. They will start clearing this area for the interceptor building. Some equipment started showing up today for that. They're going to work on pipe supports for phase 4 at the blower building. Sandblasting and coating is going to be ongoing for the secondary clarifiers. Finishing up the secondary clarifier distribution boxes that we just saw. Working at the new RAS pump stations. I just saw a picture of one of those as well. They're going to be removing some scaffolding at thickener number 3. and putting up some scaffolding so they can continue work at thickener number 4. Lots of work surrounding the thickened sludge pump station. A little bit of remaining work at the WAS pump station, and then continued buried piping installation throughout the site. So moving from that into kind of where we are with startup and commissioning. So we've got some projected timeframes here. Some of these activities you'll see have been completed. Some are in progress, and then some are kind of to be completed very soon here. So completed, we have the effluent flume and the WAS pump station. We are currently using the effluent flume. The WAS pump station is ready for use, pending some minor HVAC sorts of things still going on. Currently in progress, we've got the medium voltage switch gear and electrical checkout. That is the new loop around the plant, the new switch gear, the new generators to replace the original electrical system at the plant. And then we will be working with Crowder to bring new facilities and existing facilities onto that new loop. So we've still got the existing electrical loop out there. We'll be bringing those equipment areas, again, both new and existing, onto the new loop in the next couple months here. And some that are anticipated for the near future, aeration basin number 6 and blower building. A couple different activities with that, starting next week with some mechanical startup activities. The influent and effluent meter vault that go out to our new EQ basin mid-July. The EQ tank commissioning, so actually bringing that EQ tank online in August. And then commissioning of the blower building and the aeration basin number 6 will be kind of towards the tail end of phase 3, and that will be in the early September time. These are all projected timeframes. Lots of things can happen, but we are certainly getting closer and closer. So with that, I'll be happy to take any questions.
Question for Thomas?
Before we wrap that up, I've got a couple things I wanted to jump on with. One, this coming Monday, we're gonna be having a call with the contractor, or engineer, and WSACC staff and everything on planning kind of what we're gonna do, ribbon cutting, wrapping up phase 3, kind of a deal. We're envisioning this being in like the September, October time period. I just wanted to let the board know about that. Let us know any ideas you have, any involvement you want to have in the planning of that. We'll welcome any ideas. Crowder's kind of taking the lead on that. We're envisioning, a tent set up, some display information on what phase 3 was, some display information on what phase 4 was, maybe some golf carts so we can give tours around the site, and then an opportunity for our local leaders, board members, elected officials to speak and to have a period of that. So we're going to be trying to pull all that together. And if any of you would like to be involved in that process or have ideas, reach out to myself or to Robin and let us know your ideas. Our thoughts is to kind of get an agenda together of what we think it's going to look like, and then quickly turn right around and try to get on the calendars of our elected officials, because we obviously want Senator Crutchfield, others to be there, and then we know they're going to be the most challenging schedules to get on for that. So definitely any feedback you have on that, reach out, because it's a big deal for our community, and we wanted it to be an opportunity to show off what all was done and what's ongoing. Because I tell you, on phase 4, they've hit the ground running. They're working out there like their tails are on fire. So I mean, it's impressive. Also, we have reached out to the staffs of all our member jurisdictions for our capacity update, or our flow updates for our 6-month update. We've heard back from several of them, but not all, but that's not due till July 8th. So nobody's late on that at this point yet. But that will be pulling together. One thing I did want to bring up that we've noticed kind of an uptick on, we've received quite a few calls over the last couple of weeks of developers concerned that they're not going to get started before their flow acceptance period, their 2 years runs out. We've educated them on what's intended by that, what's that purpose of that. Also, I've educated them that, if they start talking about the extension word or whatever, they've got to go back to the jurisdiction that they got that from. But I think it kind of makes a little sense when we've seen this backlog of projects kind of being accepted faster than they're being built. It doesn't surprise me. And so far, they've all been smaller projects. It hasn't been anything huge. But just wanted to make the board aware of that may be a little, I won't say widespread, but it may be a little bit of an issue as we move through some of these updates. And it's something definitely for our staffs to keep an eye on as we move forward.
How many total projects do we have?
I think I've talked to 3 or 4. I don't know how many. I mean, when we do our 6-month update, we usually try to identify, hey, these 3 or 4 or 6 show nothing completed, and that runs out in the next 6 months, in the next 6-month update. And usually we try to turn around, let the jurisdiction know, hey, are you aware of this project, and kind of try to get a feel or a pulse on what's going on there. So we try to be a little bit ahead on that with it, but it can be a little bit difficult sometimes.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Chad. All right, we'll open the floor up for public comments if there are any. Hearing none, we will move on to closed session. Do I hear a motion to go into closed session under GS 143, 318, 11, A1, A3, and A6? Got a motion? Second. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?